السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة. وقال سبحانه وتعالى فليحذر الذين يخالفون عن أمره أن تصيبهم فتنة أو يصيبهم عذاب أليم. صدق الله مولانا العلي العظيم. إن الله ملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. صلى الله على النبي الأمي وآله صلى الله عليه وسلم صلاة وسلاما عليك يا سيدي يا حبيبي يا رسول الله. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت يا حي يا قيوم تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. اللهم يا كريم أكرمنا بنور الفهم وأخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Today we shall go through covenant number 161 from Lawaqihul Anwar Al-Qudsiyya fi Bayan Al-Uhud Al-Muhammadiyya, the Muhammadan covenants, and it is connected with the previous covenant, the 160th covenant, in relation to adopting simplicity and leading a simple life. Now, if you look, अगर आप जायज़ा लें, अंदाज़ा करें, तो आपको पता चलेगा कि ज़िंदगी अब इतनी सिंपल नहीं रही जैसे पहले थी. There's someone who sent me a message. It was a very thought-provoking message, and I probably add to that as well. And in that message they said that before, communication was based on letters, writing letters. It was simple. Today we have smartphones with unlimited calls, unlimited minutes, unlimited texts. Yet we still don't communicate with our families, with our friends. Before, technology was very simple. The health system was very simple. Yet people were getting cured. Yeah? But now we have complex, high-classed, A-rated technological equipment in medicine, yet people are getting more ill. There's more diseases that are prevalent in this day and age than they were before. Talking about masajid, before the masajid were very, very simple. We didn't have decorations. The mosques weren't huge, gigantic, multi-million pound mosques that we are building, the new constructions that we see today. No mosque is less than £2 million, £3 million, £4 million. But those masajid were filled with people who had the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They were God-conscious people. The masjid used to be filled to the brim. But unfortunately we have huge mosques and we have very few people. Again, with homes, people used to live, entire families and the extended families used to live together in one home, in one house, under one roof, all together with love and compassion. Today we have huge houses, mansions, with plenty of rooms, plenty of space, but small families. We have lots of money, yet there's no love, there's no rest, there's no tranquil. There's no peace, there's no contentment. We have so much ease of communication, ease in life, in many aspects that save our time, yet we say we don't have enough time. So this is the comparison that we have. When there was simplicity, when people used to lead a simple life, talking about weddings before, they used to finish in about 2-3 hours maximum. Today weddings start in the morning, and then not in the morning of the 5th day before the wedding, and still continue 5 days post walima, from dawn till dusk. And again, with our food feasts, we used to have simple food and we were content. Today we are fed and we are entertained with so much Yet we are not content with that. So Imam Sha'rani rahmatullah alayhi, he is exhorting us, he is counseling us to revert back to the prophetic sunnah and adopt a life of simplicity. Simplicity doesn't mean that you live a life like a nomad and you're not allowed to wear nice clothing and etc. You are allowed to do that, but obviously that should be within limits, and with good intentions they become meritorious. But generally speaking, this is what he has said. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أخذ علينا العهد العام رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن نترك الترفع في اللباس تواضعا واقتداء برسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وأصحابه. One thing I forgot to mention there in comparison. Before, there was scarcity of masahif, the copies of the Quran were rare. But every single person, especially from the prophetic school, the Sahaba, all of them used to be memorizers of the Quran. They were all hufad of the Quran. They recited the Quran by the day and by the night. Today we have hundreds of copies. Even in our homes we have 10 copies of Al-Quran Kalim at least. Yet we don't recite it. When it was scarce, people used to recite it, people used to love it, people used to have this yearning desire to stick to the Quran by the day and by the night. And again, I would like to add to that. Today we have a lot of information, but very little knowledge. Knowledge is ilm deen. Knowledge is that which transforms your life. Knowledge is that which inculcates into your heart God consciousness. There's too much information here on smartphones, people sending you a hadith, a night of the Quran, and videos and speeches. So many speeches, so many speakers, yet so little amal. Before, speeches were very little. They used to speak less. The Messenger of Allah and the Sahaba used to speak very little. Sayyidatuna Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu ta'ala anha mentions the Prophet ﷺ's speech was scattered, scattered in the sense that it was spaced. If someone wanted to count his words, ﷺ, they would be able to count it, they would be able to recollect whatever the Prophet ﷺ said. Today our speeches go on and our programs go on and on and on, but amal is very scarce. Amal is very little. And the other thing is, we have so many speeches and so many programs and so few attendees. Before, there were programs that were few and far between, but mashallah, the masajid used to be filled to the brim, because there were sincere people who used to come with the intention to learn the deen, to practice it, with the intention to enhance their knowledge of the deen. Today there's overindulgence in everything. Extravagance and you can say in inverted commas extremism. So he says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, this covenant has been taken from us which reaches the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that we abandon and abstain ourselves from wearing clothes that exhibit vainglory and haughtiness and pride, tawadu'an wa iqtida'an bi rasulillahi sallallahu alaihi wasallam wa ashabihi, out of humbleness and in order to emulate and imitate and follow Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions, to live a simple life. Subhanallah. And I'm going to mention later on how simple was the life of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Actually, I'll just mention to you right now what the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what lifestyle he had sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa baraka wa sallam. It says in Shama'il al-Tirmidhi that the Prophet ﷺ had a cloak that would be spread out for him wherever he went. It would be folded twice underneath him. And then it continues saying the Prophet ﷺ would often sleep only on a palm mat. Everything's become complex. Technology is complex. You had phones that were easy, the brick phone, mashallah, that you could, and even before that, your dial phone that you had, phone booths that you used to go to and pay 5 pence whatever, and you used to be able to speak for hours on end, mashallah. But things have got complicated. People have got complicated. People have become complex. Being in the teaching field, complexity and complication is now even in children. They used to behave before, there used to be some sense of adab and respect. They used to be awestruck, mind the pun, that they used to have adab. But today they've become complicated, complex. difficult to handle, difficult to discipline. Everything in life has become so complicated. So remember homes that were built years back. They're still erect, they're still sound, but newly built homes need renovation, need refurbishment every 5, every 10 years. They don't stand for so long. So with ease in life that we've got nowadays, there's complications as well. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would sleep only on a palm mat, not on a memory foam mattress, not on a double king-sized bed sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Even though he sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Shahanshah, the king of all kings sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to recline on a palm mat with nothing else underneath it. Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu reported, this narration is from Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mas'ud in Imam Tabarani's Al-Mu'jam Al-Kabir. I once went to see the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam as he was in his chamber, and it was so hot inside. It was so hot. It was like a bath. It was like a sauna. I went into a sauna room. Allahu Akbar. Today we have AC, we have fans, we have windows, double glazed windows to protect us from the adverse weather conditions outside, radiators and heating systems inside, and still we don't thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sleeping on the palm mat that had left its imprint marks on his side. आपके सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के पीठ मुबारक के ऊपर निशान पड़ गए थे. Seeing this, I began to cry, and when he woke up, he asked me, "What causes you to cry, Abdullah?" I replied, "O Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Khosroes and Caesar, Qaisar and Kisra sleep comfortably upon silken beddings, and here you are sleeping on this palm mat that has left marks on you." The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, "Do not cry, Abdullah, for they have the lower world and we have the hereafter." Allahu Akbar. In another narration of Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu, in the narration, in the incident of Ila and Takhir, which I mentioned to you before, Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma reported that Umar ibn al-Khattab related radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, I went to see the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he was lying upon a palm mat. I sat down and saw that he was wearing a loincloth and nothing more, and saw that the palm mat had left an imprint upon his blessed side. Today, if we find a little bit of pain, on our couches, on our sofas, we start complaining. We say, "Get rid of these, we need to buy new ones." Yeah. Where is the contentment of the heart? Where is simplicity? He then says, I saw in the home the possessions of the Prophet ﷺ, and he says there was about a sa' of barley, approximately 2 to 3 kilograms maximum, and an untanned animal skin hanging on the wall. Seeing this sight, my eyes welled up with tears. The Messenger ﷺ asked me, "What makes you cry, O son of Khattab?" I replied, "O Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how can I not cry when this palm mat has left an imprint on your side, and here is your provision that I see is so scant, while Khosroes and Caesar, Qaisar and Kisra enjoy the fruits and flowing rivers, and you are the Prophet of Allah, the chosen one, the best of the creation, and these are your scarce possessions." Allah Akbar. The Prophet ﷺ said, "O son of Al-Khattab, are you not pleased that we have the hereafter and they have this low world? They are a folk for whom the fine things of this world have been hastened and given, and they are bound to vanish, while we are a folk, a group whose fine things and bounties and blessings are delayed for us, prepared for us, inshallah, in the akhirah." This is how the Prophet ﷺ used to inculcate contentment in the hearts of the companions. Same with Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, I mentioned to you, wearing patched clothing. Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he bequeathed his people, at the time of his departure from this mundane world, he had appointed Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu through mushawara, obviously, and then he left a bowl and a few other possessions, and then he said to his family, "Take all of these and deposit these in the Islamic treasury. This is for the Muslims." That is the only thing a Khalifatul Muslimin, Amirul Mu'min, the first Khalif of Islam, left behind. Allahu Akbar. We shall continue inshallah later on, but let me just read from this. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَلَوْ كَانَ مَعَنَا قَنَاطِيرُ مِنَ الذَّهَبِ. Even if we have mountains or a tremendous amount of gold, we should still adopt simplicity and have tawadu and inkisar and have humbleness in our lifestyle. فنجعل ذلك في مرضات الله تعالى من الإنفاق على الفقراء والمساكين والمحاويج. And the excess that we have, we should try and spend it upon the poor, upon the destitute, upon the needy, out of seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even if you had affluence of wealth, still live a life of simplicity. Give the excess away in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Give it away in the way of Allah fi sabilillah, to the muhajirin, to the fuqara and the masakin and the mahawij. And then he says, وَهَذَا الْعَهْدُ يَخِلُّ بِهِ كَثِيرٌ مِنَ الْفُقَرَاءِ فَضْلًا عَنِ الْعَوَامِ. This covenant, many people are negligent of it, from the fuqara, let alone from the laymen, let alone from the common people. Some people who call themselves the fuqara, يعني the Sufis. وربما خلف الواحد منهم نحو 70 زيقا ثمن كل زيق 3 ذهبا أو أكثر. وَقَدْ رَأَيْتُ مَنْ خَلَفَ 700 زِيقٍ مِنَ الْعُلَمَاءِ. At times what happens is, even from these fuqara, there are people who have avarice in their hearts, greed for this world, that they leave behind 70 garments. And the value of one single garment equates to 3 gold dinars or more. And at times he says, I've seen ulama who have left behind 700 garments. Yani, Allahu Akbar. Then what can we say about the awam? وكان سيد علي الخواس رحمه الله يقول ينبغي التسليم لمن لبس الثياب الفاخرة من الأولياء كسيد عبد القادر الجيلي وسيد علي ابن وفاء وسيد مدين وأضرابهم. Now obviously, again, admonishing us that we shouldn't point fingers at everyone and anyone, especially the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when they wear garments that are elegant. They may be A-rated, beautiful, nice, elegant clothing. Do not criticize them, do not object to them. He says, especially the likes of Sayyid al-Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani radiallahu ta'ala anhu. It has been mentioned in Bahj al-Asrar Sharif by Imam al-Shattanofi radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and narrated again by Imam Yahya al-Tadifi in Qada'id al-Jawahir, that Sayyid al-Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani gave a beautiful, expensive fabric to a tailor to make a jubba, a robe. So the tailor looked at the garment, he opened it, and he was taken aback. And he thought to himself, how can this shaykh claim himself to be a Sufi from the fuqara, yet he wears such expensive items of clothing? This thought just occurred in his mind. What happened? There was a corn, yani a pimple that appeared in his foot. So at first he thought this is nothing, it's okay. He overlooked it. Later on it came to the brink of being cancerous, and he went to all the physicians, they couldn't cure him. And then later on he realized that this very disease that I've been afflicted with is a cause of me objecting and criticizing Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani radiallahu ta'ala. So then he went straight to Shaykh Abdul Qadir, or he was taken to Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and before he would say anything, our master Al-Ghawth Al-Azam radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, how dare you criticize the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Don't you know that whatever we wear, we are commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to wear, only then do we wear these garments. The same with Shaykh Ali ibn Wafa radiallahu ta'ala anhu, whose mazashib is in Cairo, near Jabal Muqattam. Alhamdulillah, we've been on to visit the Sadat al-Wafa'iyya, the masters, the Wafa'i masters. His family and the great awliya are resting there. Sayyidi Madyan al-Maghribi radiallahu ta'ala, and others who are similar from the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He then says, وَقَدْ كَانَ سَيِّدِ عَبْدُ الْقَادِرِ يَلْبَسُ كُلَّ ذِرَاعٍ مِنَ الْخَامِ بِدِينَارٍ. Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani radiallahu ta'ala used to wear garments. Every arm's length of that would equate to a gold dinar. Yani the fabric was such that an arm's length of that fabric would cost a gold dinar. فاعترض عليه بعض الناس. Some people then laid an objection. فقال العبد إذا مات كفن مرة. He said, when a person dies, he's shrouded. जब किसी का इंतकाल हो जाए, मर जाए, तो उसे कफन पहनाया जाता है. وأنا قدمت أكثر من 100 موتة في مخالفة نفسي فلي أن ألبس كل بدلة ثمن 100 كفن. Subhanallah. As for me, I have already experienced 100 deaths by, subhanallah, annihilating my ego more than 100 times. I've killed my ego more than 100 times. So I've experienced death more than 100 times. So I have the right to wear garments and a kafan equivalent to the kafan that's been given to a person 100 times, worried to die 100 times. Or to 100 people who have passed away. Subhanallah. Because I've already experienced death 100 times. मैंने अपने आप को मार दिया है 100 दफ़ा अपने नफ्स की मुखालफत के साथ मैंने अपने आप को 100 से ज़ायद दफ़ा मैं अपने आप को मार चुका हूँ और जो मर जाता है उसे एक दफ़ा कफन दिया जाता है तो अब जाहिर सी बात है कि मैंने अपने आप को 100 दफ़ा मैंने अपने आप को मार दिया है तो मेरा हक बनता है कि मैं 100 मौत की कफन उसकी कीमत का ये लिबास में पहनूं सुभान अल्लाह ثم السر في ترك اللباس الرفيع أن النفس تميل إليه بالخاصية وتفرح به وكل شيء فرح به العبد من الدنيا حجبه عن دخول حضرة الله عز وجل كما تحجب المعصية. The other secret in abandoning and abstaining from wearing elegant clothing, expensive clothing, is that the ego, the nafs, inclines towards items of clothing, especially towards items of clothing. When you're wearing an elegant item of clothing, even if you're praying namaz, your heart will still be there. Your eyes will be gazed on the items of clothing. And the person becomes happy and experiences joy by looking at his garment and everything from the dunya, which makes a person pleased. Yani anything from the materialistic possessions of this world which pleases a servant will become an obstacle for him entering into the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the same manner as sins become an obstacle for a person entering into the presence of Allah. So when you become happy with your new car, when you become overjoyed with the new item of clothing that you've just purchased for yourself, when you are overexcited with the new pair of trainers that you're wearing, then this becomes an obstacle for you entering into the presence of Allah. You've become blocked. There's an obstruction there. There's a screen. You've been screened from entering into the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَيُرِيدُ الْإِنسَانُ أَن يَجِدَ قَلْبَهُ حَالَ لُبْسِ الرَّفِيعِ الْفَاخِرِ مِثْلَ حَالِ فِي حَالِ لُبْسِ الْخَلَقِ الْقَلِيلِ الثَّمَنِ فَلَا يَقْدِرُ وَمَنْ شَكَّ فَلْيُجَرِّبْ. A man wants to keep the same state of his heart at the time of wearing expensive, elegant, A-rated, first-class items of clothing. He wants to keep his heart in the same state of consciousness, in the same state of taqwa, as he was were he to wear ragged, shabby clothing which wouldn't equate to even a few dirhams, let alone dinars. But he can't keep the state of his heart stable. It changes. Is bound to change. And he says, whoever doubts this, then let him experience it himself. If you're wearing a simple item of clothing, you're praying namaz, wear something that dazzles the eye and then start praying namaz and look and investigate the state of your heart. You see a change, you will see a drastic difference. If you're driving a Toyota Corolla and then you sit in a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or a Bugatti, Hanibai, you'll vouch for this, you probably know that your heart changes. He didn't say, I'm driving a Ferrari, but I have taqwa here, khulus, I deem everyone as superior than me. It's difficult. He says it's difficult. وكذلك جربنا السجود على الأرض الطاهرة بلا حائل يجد الإنسان انفساحا وانشراحا والصلة بالله عز وجل بخلاف الصلاة على بساط أو حصير. वो भी ये भी फरमाते हैं कि मैंने ये भी तजर्बा किया है कि जब आदमी ज़मीन पर डायरेक्ट बगैर किसी चीज़ के हाइल यानी मुसल्ला या कोई भी चीज़ के बगैर डायरेक्ट मिट्टी पर ज़मीन पर सजदा करता है तो जो कैफियत उसे मिलती है, जो लज्जत उसे हासिल होती है उस वक्त, जो अल्लाह ताला की बारगाह में जो उसे कनेक्शन मिलता है, जो उसे ताल्लुक़ मिलता है नमाज में, वो उस वक्त नहीं मिलता कि जब वो कारपेट के ऊपर या मुसल्ले के ऊपर नमाज पढ़ता है. Allah. To the extent that if someone was to pray directly on earth without any obstacle in between, a prayer mat or anything, He would find infisahan wa inshirahan. He would find, subhan, expansion of the heart in terms of the spiritual world. And he would find rupture and joy. And he would find, subhanallah, the beauty and the sweetness of conversating with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He would experience the maqam of ihsan greater than were he to do sajda on a carpet or a prayer mat. Because it's distraction. At times what happens is we have so fancy, obviously this is okay to an extent. Some people, I've seen in some mosques, they have so much design on the place of sujood, that the person, whilst he's praying namaz, is actually so dazzled by and mesmerized by the embroidery. He's like fantasized. He's in the world of design rather than in the spiritual world where he's conversating with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, with mosques, there's dazzling lights, color everywhere, decorations. In every empty space that a person finds, the committee says, let's paint some flowers, let's paint a scenic picture there, put some frames there, outdated, 1960s, whatever it may be. We just need to fill the space in this attraction. But again, the heart's not there. The heart's not connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Huge mosques, multi-million-pound mosques, designed, painted, decorated, ornamented with huge chandeliers, but bereft of musallis, bereft of people who come and pray namaz with sincerity. Allah Allah. ومدار كلام الشارع ونصحه لنا على عكوفنا في حضرة الله عز وجل ليعطي الخدمة للحق حقها ويتملى بشهوده تعالى لأنه صلى الله عليه وسلم أشفق علينا من أنفسنا فضلا عن والدينا فما منعنا من فعل شيء إلا هو يبعدنا عن حضرة الحق تعالى وقد أخبرنا أن كل من تكبر قسمه الله تعالى. He then says the crux and the reason of why the Messenger ﷺ told us and informed us and instructed us and counseled us and advised us to live a simple life, and why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala why the Prophet ﷺ has constantly told us that do things that will allow you to stay constantly in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is so that you can serve Allah, you can express ubudiyah, servitude and servanthood to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as it is your right to be a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لِيُعْطِي الْخِدْمَةَ لِلْحَقِّ حَقَّهَا. Give the full right of ubudiyah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that he enjoys witnessing the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore cast and leave and abstain from all things which distract you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This dunya is an entire distraction. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الدُّنْيَا حُلْوَةٌ خَضِرَةٌ. This dunya is sweet, it's green, it's appealing to the eye. But in reality it's nothing. It's just charms. It is just hallucination. Illusions that people see. A mirage that a person sees in the midst of a desert, when he goes there, it's nothing. The reality is that you stay in the presence of Allah subhanahu. That charm and that beauty and that joy and happiness and rapture surpasses all other joy. Subhanallah. And then he says, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told us why? Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the most compassionate from the entire creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to us, even than our parents. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has more compassion and mercy upon us than even our parents. That is why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told us everything that we should do and everything that we should abstain from, because things that are prohibited, they will take you away from the presence of Allah. They will be things that will distance you from the rapture and the joy that you were to be received, were you to stay away from in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also mentioned, أَنَّ كُلَّ مَنْ تَكَبَّرَ قَسَمَهُ اللَّهُ. Whosoever expresses arrogance and pride and haughtiness, Allah will destroy him. If a person wears an item of clothing and walks arrogantly, you know today's youngsters and the way they walk, Allahu Akbar, they actually need to learn how to walk. How to walk like a human being. Yani pir baad mein inshallah, a true Muslim, inshallah. How a human being walks. Our primordial nature is that we have been created out of soil, and the innate characteristic of soil is that when you throw it up, it goes down. Soil is trodden on. Soil is pierced. Soil is used to sow seeds so that it then grows forth plants that bear fruit and that grow trees that are laden with fruit. So soil in its natural characteristic has humbleness and tawadu. But unfortunately some, inverted commas, human beings, I'm being very nice and kind to them, calling them human beings, more like monstrous vampires, do not walk and talk and conversate and live like human beings. And Islam is Deenul Fitra. Islam is a religion which removes all of these obstacles, which distance ourselves from our fitra, and then bring us back to our original state of humbleness and simplicity and tawadu. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq to be content with what we have. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant me and everyone the tawfiq to follow in the footsteps of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to internalize and emulate his sunnah and his seerah. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. Sallallahu ala nabiyyi wa alihi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Salatu wa salaman alayka ya Sayyidi ya Habibi ya Rasulullah. اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وتوفنا مسلمين. اللهم ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. اللهم رب اجعلني مقيم الصلاة ومن ذريتي ربنا وتقبل دعاء. ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من علم لا ينفع ومن قلب لا يخشع ومن نفس لا تشبع ومن دعوة لا يسمع. اللهم آت نفوسنا تقواها وزكها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها فاغفر لها. اللهم لا تجعل الدنيا أكبر همنا ولا مبلغ علمنا. اللهم استر عوراتنا وآمن روعاتنا. اقرأوا الفاتحة. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. جزا الله عنا سيدنا مولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم ما هو أهله. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.